ANA eLearning Academy is brought to you by CDN Graysheet, a trusted source of rare coin and currency valuations since 1963.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us at the ANA's eLearning Academy. My name is Andy Dickus. I'm here at ANA headquarters in Colorado Springs. And today's presentation should be interesting. Big, bold, and beautiful Royal Arch Mason Pennies and the American Numismatic Association. I'd like to thank Graysheet for their continued support of our e-learning offerings. If you have a question for Tom during his presentation, please put that in the Q&A function, and then we'll go through those questions at the end. If you just want to talk shop or talk about some of your pennies, something like that, use the chat room for that. We've got something new in terms of me moderating, at least. There are going to be some prizes given out by Tom at various points in his presentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a random number generator. I'm going to pick out one of you, and if you can answer the question that Tom has for you, you win a pretty cool prize. So Tom Carson is joining us today. He's a semi-retired civil and environmental engineer, been collecting for over 50 years. He just co-authored Tennessee Obsolete Merchant Script and Banknotes, regularly writes about Masonic Pennies. He gave a Sunman lecture this year at our show in Chicago on the very subject that you're going to be exploring today. And he's been published many times in our Numismatist magazine. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Tom. Thank you, Tom.
Well, thank you. Okay, let's start this one out with a warm-up. You know, sometimes they make you stand up and cheer. Well, Andy, can you find someone for me? We're going to have a prize, and Andy will pull someone up, and we'll talk through the questions, and I'll try not to embarrass you or myself. So the prize, whoa. There's your prize. Now, who are we going to get to do it?
Sure.
Hey,
I've allowed you to talk. Can you put yourself on unmute if you'd like to reach this prize? Richard Watley.
Hey, Richard.
Hey, Tom. How are you?
All right. The prize today is going to be a Columbia chapter penny, and you were selected by random number. So let's walk through this. Okay. When was this penny made?
It's hard to tell.
Okay, well, it's 1892. Okay, what was Ravenwood, Illinois is where?
It's around Chicago.
Yeah, it became part of Chicago in 1899. In 1892, what was going on in Chicago?
World's Fair had just started.
The World Columbian Exposition. Well, the Ravenwood chapter Ravenwood was already part of Chicago 3 years before. They probably still had a Ravenwood mailing address. So when the pennies came out, they had Ravenwood, Illinois on them. And there were some, they reordered, had them with Chicago on them since they were now part of Chicago. And that's how we got this pretty penny with Columbia on it. And I know Richard, I'll get this to him, Andy. So
you got his contact info?
Yeah.
His address? Okay.
Yeah, we'll go on to you want it, Richard.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
Right.
Now, let's start my journey. I'm not a Mason. I've collected stamps, I've collected coins, I've collected paper money. I co-wrote with Dennis Schafflutzel the book on Tennessee obsolete. One day on eBay, I found this penny. And I couldn't figure out what in the world the back of the U.S. penny had the front of the Binghamton chapter on it. Now, I didn't know a thing about Masonic pennies, but that got me started. And it's been quite a journey, almost an obsession. So, Masonic pennies, in this particular case, the Binghamton chapter, you can see the drawing over on the lower right, was the chapter of Dr. Benjamin Wright. Now, Benjamin Wright was the 5th president of the ANA. And he was a friend of W.O. Buckland, who was another early numismatist. And Wright, as president, wrote several articles for the numismatists, then came back out with these articles in booklet form. And he started something that we're going to talk about extensively today. Masons were shrouded in secrecy. In the Royal Archmason, the 4th degree of the York Rite is the Royal Archmason. And on earning the 4th degree, they earned a penny. They entered their mark in the chapter books of mark and placed the mark on the penny. The mark was usually placed in the center of the keystone, and the keystone on this particular penny is up at the top. The keystone is the stone that pulled the arch together, kept it standing. Okay. Now, secrecy caused a lot of confusion. Dr. Wright, when he started working on this, he sent letters to chapters asking for their pennies. And he made these comments. One town contained 2 chapters. One badly plagiarized the sign of King Cyrus mark. I'm not sure what that story goes back. But even in a small town, the other chapter didn't even know what was meant by a marked penny. And a few chapters tried to hide behind a thing that their pennies were exclusive to their members. So a lot of chapters, you could not get the pennies. And this made it real hard to collect the early pennies. And Wright had the problem that he got letters from officers of chapters asking what was meant by chapter penny. They never heard or seen. And so that's the early days of trying to collect Masonic pennies. Now, the ANA crew that worked on this, Dr. B.P. Wright was the president of ANA, the 5th president. William Buckland, we remembered William Pulliam engraved some of the dies for some of the Masonic pennies. E.G. Clark was another early Mason. John Tenek was involved in the project, and he happened to own an 1804 dollar. Brother Benny Bowie did a bibliography of Masonic medals and badges in 1905, and this was really a collection of what they had in New York. David Gibson, ANA 280, is the father of Canadian chapter pennies. Until Wright wrote his first article in ANA, there were no chapter pennies in Canada. And he got in with David Gibson, and Canada has some of the has some very beautiful pennies. Then A.G. Pitts, who was Secretary of King Cyrus in Michigan, introduced the shekel in 1895. We don't know when the penny started, but we do know the first shekel was 1895. Okay. Wright's 3 booklets came out 1901 to 1904. And then in them, he identified about 300 different pennies. Now, they did not have the technology we have today. So the pennies were nice drawings of the pennies. And as I say, he identified about 300 different ones. Earlier, I mentioned when a Mason earned his 4th degree, he put his mark in the chapter book of marks, and then he put his mark on his chapter penny. Well, here's an example out of the book of marks from a main chapter, and this guy's mark was a sea dog. And it was dated April 4th, 1895. This one from Richfield Springs, New York, has a wonderful mark for B. Albert Cook. And Cook was an early cinematographer. And I was able to, the Smithsonian has one of his covers, but his mark was an early movie projector. He's famous for starting the outdoor movies. Okay. When were the pennies started? We really don't know. In the Medals of the Masonic Fraternity by William T. Marvin in 1880, he lists 1 Mark Lodge penny from the Excelsior Lodge in Philadelphia. This was a lodge, but it was a Mark Lodge, and they had the keystone for the mark on it. He also mentioned keystone stock pennies with the HTWSSTKS, and that means Hiram Ty, or widow's son, send it to King Solomon. Now, this was an early attempt at the Masonic pennies. These you'll see 1876 up to 1886. But we still did not have pennies engraved for Royal Arch Mason chapters. There was also attempts at taking different coins and shaving the coins down and put the keystone on them for the mark. And you've got Hiram, the widow's son. These are 3 examples. The one on the right was a shaved silver dollar. And if you'll notice the mark on it, it's a wheel with wings out of it. Now, that was the early logo of the Indy 500. And Charles E. Hicks, out of Piqua, Ohio, was Secretary Treasurer of the Meteor Ambulance Company, and they were involved in the early Indy 500. So his mark was the logo of the Indy 500. And a variation of it now is the logo of the Ohio State Police. Okay, there were a lot of earlier pennies that Wright didn't know about. These are some of the dies by Lovett. And Lovett was a Civil War die sinker. One of the Lovett brothers is credited with the Confederate cent. But as I say, in 4 years, Wright did not have listings of any of these because it was so hard to find out from other chapters. He being a Mason and Buckland being a 32nd degree would go to the other chapters and not get information from them. But this is the Washington chapter out of Houston. There were 2 different varieties on it, mainly because of the size of the die, the planchet they used. The Lincoln chapter out of Lincoln, Nebraska. The Pythagoras chapter out of Tennessee. Washington chapter out of Akron, Indiana. Now this one was a mistake. It should have been Akron, Ohio. According to the King book, King thought they had only 2 at the House of the Temple, but in the last presentation I did, someone informed me that they had this one, and they also had the one from Muscatine, Iowa. They're a Washingtonia collector. And then there's a Jackson chapter number 3 from Michigan. You notice these are images out of the King book. They're really hard to come by. This is the Indian Territory one. It was also done in silver. There's a silver one at the House of the Temple. Greeley chapter number 13 from Colorado. It's copper and silver at the House of the Temple, but they didn't put an image in the King book. The Franklin chapter out of Upper Alton, Illinois is probably a Lovett. We don't know who did the Lafayette chapter out of Fort Gaines, Georgia, but it's another very rare one. Okay. Wright really got involved with this, and he got the other Masons involved, numismatists involved with it. Here's something from Wright's 3rd list. These little metallic tokens of friendship and brotherly love long resist the corroding action of time and will continue to bear that are to come, and future generations of masters will gaze upon them with the wonder and astonished that so poor of an emblem of day's wages could content their forefathers. Now these, we'll go into this in just a minute, but they also will see some exquisite specimens of the same epoch, which will cause them to think that there were indeed in those days some of the brethren that were not lacking in artistic taste and numismatic knowledge. Okay, what he was really upset about was the wax infused pennies. This one is the green chapter, the real penny. He had an illustration of this in his first book. He went on to say in his 3rd list, only one class, i.e. the countersinks, are devoid of beauty and are rapidly passing out of use. Hence, we may use them, wish them a fraternal Godspeed as harbingers of more attractive series. So he really trashed this style of penny, and they were in cues and filled with black wax. And the black wax, a lot of it's come out. Now, not all of them were devoid of any relevance. This particular one, if you'll notice over on the right, William Mckinley. This is President McKinley's Masonic penny. It is not real pretty. There are some beautiful Masonic pennies with McKinley on them later, but this is the one that he had. He was a member of the Canton chapter, and this was used about the time he was assassinated. Now, here's some examples before and after Wright and ANA did their thing. The Houstonic chapter out of Connecticut. There's their ugly penny. Here's the Houstonic chapter after ANA got a hold of it. And that's a wonderful scene with the Indian brave in the mountains. Also, it looks like a priest and maybe 4 Indians in the countryside. Now, this one had a super small keystone on it. It had the keystone, but it would be hard as the Dickens to put your mark on it. And this one comes in copper, aluminum, silver, bronze, and brass. Now, the Never Sink chapter, dang, it's sensitive. The Never Sink chapter, here again, was their ugly penny. And after Wright got a hold of them, here is their beautiful penny. And this one was copper, aluminum, brass, bronze, silver, and silver was not listed in the King. This one is the X brand example. Oh, well, this is the aluminum one, but the silver was not listed in King. It belonged to Brand, and I have it. It's 34 millimeters, and they later reduced it to 28. These were big. Most of the Masonic pennies started out 34, 35. Then they came down to around 32. Then some of them were later reduced to 28 millimeters, sort of like the US penny did over time. Here's the Oswego River chapter, Phoenix, New York. And you'll notice it used the same reverse as the one from Connecticut. A lot of times when they made a beautiful engraving like that, they would use it on several different coins. I'm going to go through some of the prettier ones that were done. One of the things that King really wanted the pennies to be representative of the chapter, what it was like in the neighborhood, like the Never Sink chapter was on the sea. This one is the Rabboni chapter, and this is Jesus with Mary at the tomb. Rabboni means rabbi. It has an interesting mark on it. It's got an eagle on top of a missile, riding one. Now, the Oregon Trail chapter was founded in 1928, and this is their version of the Oregon Trail versus the US Men's version. Somehow I may be a little bit biased, but I like the Oregon Trails chapter better. It's a fairly rare penny. I sent a copy of it to the Grand Secretary of Nebraska, and he's in his 80s and he had never seen the penny. These pennies, a lot of them are very rare. It was unusual that the average order was 50, and it was unusual that over a couple hundred were ordered at one time. Now, this one doesn't excite me as much, but Wright really liked it. And he went ahead and wrote this testimonial to this penny in his book. And this design was used on about probably 6 or 8 more chapters, mainly around Chicago, but as far away as Pennsylvania. Here's some beautiful ones. This is the Isle of Pines in Cuba. It's a fairly rare penny, but an interesting thing is the dies for this penny were found about 3 weeks ago in a warehouse in New England. The canal zone, you know, the canal zone, what do? You make a canal, and here's a sailing ship going through the canal zone, Ancon chapter. Glen Falls, New York. Beautiful falls on the penny. It matches what they were talking about. Wrong Way, Hiram. This is probably one of the prettier engravings on a U.S. penny. And guess what? The dies were found on it a few weeks ago. This is the seal of California. And on this particular one, you know, we had Hiram, the widow's son, sent it to King Solomon. Well, it's supposed to go clockwise. But on this particular one, it goes counterclockwise. And this is the only error of any of the Masonic pennies we know of that are that way. Okay. This mouse is real touchy. They used a lot of, you know, the Wright chapter had a U.S. penny back on the back of it. This is from the Occident chapter in Toronto, Canada. And they had 4 that were money oriented. You've got a denarius. It's a really weird denarius. You've got a British penny, sort of a US penny, then you've got a Hebrew shekel. And the shekels, the first one was made in 1895 in Detroit. And they went on to be, there's probably a couple thousand different shekels in the Masonic pennies. They're the best we can figure, there's around 22,000 different Masonic pennies. Now, this one is a real good. They were using, you know, pennies. Well, the Webb chapter in Cleveland, Ohio, they got a Persian penny and put the front on their denarius. Well, when Wright had someone translate the penny, this one turned out to talk about some different gods, and the Masons believed in one God. So Wright wrote a whole page up on how bad this was. And the chapter was so embarrassed that they immediately quit using it and put out one with Thomas Webb's bust on it. This is one of my favorite pennies. This is Moses in the burning bush. Now, there were several burning bush chapters, but none of them used this particular image. This one is the sailing chapter number 74 out of Marshall, Missouri. And one of these closed on eBay Sunday night for $50-some. This is the Woods chapter out of Henniker, New Hampshire. And if you'll notice, these there's all three of them slightly different. So they're three different engravings. Well, that one. Now, this one is a mule. You've got a New Hampshire chapter on the front, and you've got a New York chapter on the back. Or flip it around, you've got a New York chapter. Now, in the dies that came out of the MC Lilly collection, they had one for the Chesapeake Royal Arch chapter in Salisbury, Maryland. And this die was engraved right around 1940. We have been unable to find any examples of pennies from that die. You know, they spent a lot of money making the die. You would think that, you know, the making the pennies is cheap, but I've contacted the chapter and they haven't been able to find anything for me on it. But I'd love to find a penny from this die. Now, I think this is one of the most majestic Native Americans ever on a coin. Beats the dickens out of the Buffalo nickel. This is the Chippewa chapter out of Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. And this is a 32 millimeter coin. You notice it says it was chartered February 17, 1875. Well, the pennies, dang, the Masonic pennies, the first ones probably weren't made till about 1890. This one I'd say is probably after 1905. The charter dates on Masonic pennies usually don't mean a lot, except in a situation like the Ravenwood chapter, where that was the first one the chapter used. And it was during the, you know, the right time period. Now, the Canadians had a lot of Native American on those. These, I think, are all works from Gibson. And they had a really pretty one on the Algonquin chapter out of Sault Ste. Marie, Canada. Here's some examples of several chapters in Washington used a die similar to this. There's Falls City, and it had falls on it. There's Everett, which has the city on it, and another city. The Calumet, the Indian head in Calumet, was used on several different Masonic pennies. This is out of Mechanicsville, New York. There was also out of Fort Madison, Iowa, Indian Territory, Oklahoma. And the Indian Territory, Oklahoma, that penny, people were playing with probably up to the 1970s, just because it said Indian Territory. And some of them aren't really true. Okay. This is the Ark of the Covenant. And it was used in several different styles on Masonic pennies. This is the monitor chapter out of Ely, Nevada. There was one from Alabama with this design, one from Missouri, Illinois, the delta or equilateral triangle was the sign of a chapter. So on this particular penny, you have a chapter with the Ark of the Covenant on it. And this was used on a bunch of different Masonic pennies, but on some of them, there's one that had a dove in it. There's other designs in the chapter. And this is the temple chapter out of Coldwater, Michigan. And this type design was used on several others. Okay, question again. Andy, can you pick somebody else to?
All right, let's do it. 1 second here.
Okay.
AP, congratulations. You got a chance here.
AP, can you unmute, please?
Hello.
Hello.
Doing?
Welcome. Welcome to your chance to win a penny.
Okay.
Okay. Now, this is Masonic penny from the Johnstown chapter of Johnstown, New York.
Mhm.
And this penny has some symbolism on it, but it also, in that symbolism, there's a reason why a lot of Masonic pennies are scarce. Do you know what this is on the center of this penny?
It looks kind of like a billboard and like looks like a piece of furniture with a T on it and a couple of columns.
Well, this is a Masonic apron.
Oh,
And-
it does look like an apron actually.
Yeah.
And it has a shovel nearby it and a pick or a hammer.
It had a pick, and down here's a crowbar.
Uh-huh.
But this is a Masonic apron. Now, when a Mason is buried, they're in a Masonic funeral, they wear their aprons.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now, why would this have to do anything with the rarity of the Royal Archmason's pennies?
Well, maybe the coins got buried with the people.
Exactly. Give her her penny.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations. You got that one on the dot.
So, hey,
Thank you.
AP, if you could send me an email to museum@money.org, I'll make sure Tom gets your address and you get your coin.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Again, museum@money.org.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's do one more. Okay, Andy, give me another victim.
Greg, it's your turn.
Oh. Interesting story on Greg. Greg and I went to high school 50 some years ago.
Oh,
But
really?
he's not a coin collector. He doesn't know about this, so it'll be a fresh insight.
Awesome.
Greg, in all the pennies you saw, which one was your favorite?
Hear me?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Well, I think I like the one with Mary on it, Jesus and Mary.
Yeah, that is a really pretty penny. That's the only place that that image is used on a Masonic penny. And you can't have that penny. It's a pretty rare penny.
Oh, darn.
But you can have a Columbia.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Now, I'm going to do a little something different right now. I did this in Chicago. It wasn't part of the presentation, but can you all see the token catalog? Andy, can you, sir, Greg, can you see token catalog on the screen now? Hello?
Yes. What I'm seeing right now is a slide that just says Masonic Pennies on tokencatalog.com. Nearly 18,000 existed.
It's not picking up this screen. Ah, darn it. Okay, we'll have to talk through it. Wonder if, wait a minute. Okay. Now, can you see it?
Yes, I'm seeing it now.
What's that?
I'm seeing the what looks to be a catalog.
Okay. Okay. We've been working on a project for 7 years now, trying to catalog all the Masonic pennies. And that's been quite an effort. But I want to show you, like, if you go to Estate, tokencatalog.com, go to State, and I'm going to New York. And it's going to be slow since I've got, okay. If I come here to all listings, I can say Masonic tokens. And there are 1,269 Masonic pennies from Masonic tokens from New York. Now, there are some that aren't pennies. They're other Masonic numismatics, but I'm going down to New York City, and New York. And like, here's the Masonic pennies that we have from New York City. There's quite a few of them. We have some of the ugly ones. Then we've got some of the real beautiful ones. Let me find some of them. I think this is sort of neat. It's mainly machine work, but it's a pretty penny. Now, never before has there been at one place this much information on Masonic pennies. We've got almost 18,000 of them listed. And some of them are really neat. Like, this is the Corinthian chapter out of New York, and the guy's mark is a heart-shaped ruby or colored glass. I'm not sure. I like to think it's ruby, but I could be wrong. So the Corinthian chapter has a great big Corinthian column, and the Masonics, the Masons made the columns. So we have in New York alone, we have 1,200, the New York State, 1,269 Masonic pennies, New York City, 175. And there's really some neat pennies in the bunch. This one, I should have put this over with others. This has a couple Hebrew shekels on it and 1 penny. It's the Empire chapter out of New York. It's a pretty neat penny. So anytime you all need to find out what Masonic pennies are available from an area, you can come in, choose Masonic tokens. You can choose any state. I'm going to Tennessee because that's mine. And we're at 399 pennies right now. I'm going to Murfreesboro. I'll go to Chattanooga. I don't have my glasses on because of the glare from, come on, where's John Bailey? I lived in Chattanooga for quite a few years. John Bailey Mckinley, his bust on it was quite a character. He moved to Chattanooga after the Civil War and was a pharmacist. He was mayor of Chattanooga. Then he became president of the Southern League of Baseball. When this was number 49 was the Hamilton chapter, which Chattanooga's in Hamilton County. And then he, when he died, they renamed it the John Bailey Mckinley chapter and put his bust on it. Okay. Now, there are right now 17,696 Masonic pennies and tokens we have listed on here. And we're adding more every day. So this is set up to where anybody can add to token catalog. It's a combination from, it's a great knowledge management tool. Okay, I'm going to close this one. Can you see the Masonic pennies showing again, the blue one?
Again, oh yeah, we're on additional resources now.
Okay, additional resources. I've scanned like the Wright chapter pennies, booklets 1 through 3. I've scanned them. I made them searchable, easy to use, and they're free. And I've also scanned the King Masonic chapter pennies. It was done in 1929. And it, you know, if you'll just send me an email, I'll send you a link where you can download them. My email's there, tcarson@ewkm.net. Now, this is it for me. I will take questions. There are probably, my best guess, a little over 1,000 pictorial Royal Arch Mason pennies. No one living or dead has ever seen them all. And I'd love to be able to someday make a coffee table picture book on Masonic pennies. And another project we're trying to do is get permission to scan the collection at the House of the Temple. It would probably add another 3,000 listings to token catalog. So that's it for me. Questions?
Does anybody have a question for Tom? I found that resource, that token resource, very, very impressive. What's the website again?
It's not a website. You just send me an email and I'll send you links to download those.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Um,
I'd like that. Because I work with the ANA's collection, and
Yeah.
I think that could be a good resource for us.
Yeah, they're searchable. So that just email me at tcarson@ewkm.net. I have more, a whole lot of resources that are scanned and searchable. So I either did a really good job, no questions, or I put everybody to sleep.
No, I certainly learned a lot from the presentation on a subject that I did not know really anything about. So I certainly learned something today. Anybody else have any questions for Tom?
Let's see. Does ANA have any of the pennies?
I guess that's we do have a small collection of Masonic pennies. I probably should have done a little bit more research, Dennis, before this presentation. I know that we do have a small collection. I can get back to you to let you know specifically what we have if you're interested.
And thanks, AP.
Everyone, well, thanks, Tom. Again, I learned a lot. Hope people have as well. So we're going to be putting this on our website, money.org, if you'd like to rewatch it. We also put all of our e-learning presentations online, both on money.org and on our YouTube channel. So, we've really had dozens and dozens and dozens of very informational presentations, and they are available for you as a resource. So go on to money.org or look up our ANA YouTube page. Again, thanks for joining us for the eLearning Academy, everyone. I appreciate it. Look for upcoming presentations in the near future. I think we've got a lull for a couple of weeks, and then we start going in mid-October. So check out what the new stuff that we have to offer is. And thanks to Gray Sheet again for their continued support of our e-learning opportunities. Thanks to Tom again and everyone, and have a good day.